With Spider-Man Far From Home in theaters now, there are 12 Marvel Spider-Man movie villains that we can now go in and rank. I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best, which are my favorites, which ones are worst, which ones are the greatest. But of course, with this list, I want you guys to comment down below and let me know what your list is for all 12 Spider-Man villains. This is going to be a fun video overall. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. At number 12 is Rhino from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They didn't have enough to do with anything about Rhino. There's a small little action set piece with Andrew Garfield in the beginning of the film and in the end, and it looks decent. I'm sure maybe if they did more with the character down the road with this supposed Sinister Six that they tried setting up, maybe I would have fallen a little bit more head over heels for Rhino. And even though I really do like the character of the Rhino in the comics, I don't like how they went more robotic with him. I think there was a little bit more that you could have done with the character, and I get it, this Amazing Spider-Man, they're going a little bit more gritty, maybe a little bit more realistic. But let's be honest, you had a lizard in the first one. Brings me to my number 11. My number 11 is Venom from Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is a mess. It's my least favorite Spider-Man film. Even though I overall can enjoy most of the Spider-Man films for what they are, Spider-Man 3's Venom it's bad. It's not the Venom character I wanted. It's not the Venom character I needed. And the design of him is just pretty overall gross. It doesn't look like Venom. And they just rush the whole symbiote story. I mean, it's pretty cool seeing Spider-Man in the symbiotic suit, but it's Venom himself that just doesn't work. And when you have not the best actor, I mean, he's a good actor, but when you don't have the best investment with the actor and setting up his story so well, then it never really turns out into anything, and Eddie Brock just ends up becoming a meh character. Coming in number 10 is Electro. I actually don't hate Electro. Like, I think a lot of people give Electro a lot of crap, and even though he is super cheesy, I have to say I do like the look of him. I like the look of Jamie Foxx in the character, and some of the action set pieces with Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, and Electro himself when they're swinging around fighting, even though it's a total CGI mess, I kind of like it because it has some cool Spider-Man feelings for it. But I will say Electro's character, the cheesiness of him, just doesn't work for the tone of the film and what they were establishing. And in general, Electro is a super cheesy character, and I think they went overly cheesy with him. Jamie Foxx is fine in the role, but again, there's just not enough to Electro, and it kind of falls flat to the whole thing with Amazing Spider-Man 2. Trying to set up too much stuff all at once. That brings me up to my number 9, that is the Green Goblin from Amazing Spider-Man 2. If you notice, a lot of these villains are pretty far low on the list, and that's because they're just all rushed. Same thing with this Harry Osborn character is so rushed to the point where you just cannot care about Dane DeHaan's character. Dane DeHaan is an excellent actor, and it pisses me off because if we would have gotten more from him in the development bringing about him and Peter Parker's relationship, I think he probably would have been an excellent Harry Osborn and even an excellent Green Goblin. But the thing is, they just didn't establish. They rushed through this to just get to that Sinister Six film, when in general they should have just taken their time a bit more and then landed the mark. That's my issue with this Amazing Spider-Man 2. I still kind of enjoy it in some parts, even though it was a guilty pleasure, but my thing is this Green Goblin character wasn't established enough. He does have some cool action moments, and he does have one of the most establishing, heartbreaking moments in any Spider-Man film ever with Gwen Stacy's death, but that's my thing with this character. Bring me to my number 8, kind of rounds out all the Amazing Spider-Man villains, and that is the Lizard. I actually like Dr. Kirk Connors in this film. I like the relationship that he has and the relationship that he brings about, and his will to become the Lizard and why he's doing this so he can grow back his arm. I do really like that, and the design of the Lizard is actually pretty unique. I don't hate it. I think some people kind of give it a little bit too much crap, but I'm one of the ones that actually don't hate the Amazing Spider-Man. I actually really liked the first one. I like the tone that they went with, and Lizard being the first villain, while should have been established a little bit more, kind of feeling like we are kind of rushing it a bit too much here, the Lizard is still a cool character, and there still is a lot of unique aspects to him. The last fight scene between him and Spider-Man is pretty cool. We bring up to my number 7, and that is Dr. Octopus from Spider-Verse. Now, I like this twist on Dr. Octopus in the Spider-Verse. I didn't really know that there was a girl version of her in a different multiverse, but now being introduced to her, I really like her. And in fact, when they bring about the MCU Doc Ock, if they ever get to that point, I actually hope they go with the girl version over the guy version. Since we've seen such a great version of the guy version, I'd actually really appreciate to see this other version inside a live action film. Even though we just got in a cartoon film, I think it'd still be cool, and the design of her is actually really unique. I just like how she moves around, and even though there isn't a lot of character development to her, she definitely is better than the other ones because of her action sequences. Brings me to my number 6. My number 6 is Kingpin. I actually really like Kingpin in Spider-Verse, and I like what Liev Schreiber had actually brought to the role. My thing with this Kingpin character, though, overall, is there's a lot of character development to him. I just don't like the design of him too much. I think he's like a little bit too cartoony with how big he is. But in general, I think Kingpin is a really cool character. And can we please get Vincent D'Onofrio inside the MCU, because he was so brilliant as Kingpin. Bringing me to my number 5 is I'm probably in the minority on this. I love Sandman. I love the character of Sandman in the original Raimi films, and I actually really wish Spider-Man 3 would have just focused on Sandman, because I think the character development with Sandman that they portrayed through the film just a little bit is super strong. And the thing about Sandman, though, is he's such a unique character, and the design of him, the way he fights, is super cool. I want more of Sandman. I would love for them to bring him in the MCU. From some interviews, I heard that they kind of like the Sand character they have in Far From Home for the split second is kind of their version of Sandman. I'm like, don't do me dirty like that. This character is so unique. We need more of him. Getting further into this ranking, guys, make sure to comment down below and let me know what your ranking is. And of course, hit that like and subscribe button if you guys are enjoying this video, because I do tons of early movie reviews, rankings, and sorts of geeky content like this. And plus, if you guys want to see films early, go over to Sam Sean Films, also located down below. I mean, my number 4 is going to be Norman Osborn, Green Goblin from Spider-Man 1, the first Sam Raimi film. Now, I love what Willem Dafoe did in this film. I think he is an excellent Green Goblin, and in fact, is very horrifying. The moments that Sam Raimi puts in here actually scarred me as a kid when I was younger. It didn't make me want to watch this film because he was so good with his horror elements and adding in Green Goblin. Now, I really wish they still would have used the test mask that they used earlier on in some test footage. If you look it up, it's like outstanding what they did with that mask, but I understand why they didn't. It's a little bit jarring, and in fact a little bit maybe too heavy for the actor to carry, but I do like the Green Goblin design in here. I like what they did with the character, and the action sequences in here are brutal with him, and the developments that they have with Willem Dafoe's character with Tobey Maguire and the relationship, the banter between them is very strong. And that brings me to my number 3. Now, spoiler alert, if you're not caught up on all your Spider-Man films, this will be a little bit of a spoiler, but that is Spider-Man Far From Home's Mysterio. Yes, Mysterio is the villain, something I think we all kind of expected, and in fact, going into the film, I'm like, he's going to be the villain, and the second that bar scene comes out, that very big exposition scene, I'm like, yep, me and my friend were right. But the way that Jake Gyllenhaal portrayed it, and also the way that the script reveals it, makes it fine for me. I think the reveal was great, and the way that he comes about, and even though those exposition scenes I'm usually not the biggest fan of, I'm fine with it in this because I think Mysterio is a excellent villain, and I love what they did within here. Even though we don't get too much of his background history, we just know it's kind of against Tony Stark. My prediction is that the rest of the Sinister Six are going to set up, everyone's going to have an issue with Tony Stark, or in a sense the Avengers, and Tom Holland's going to be the one that has to kind of clean it up. Of course, you kind of look at Vulture's character, he's kind of the same way, but my thing is with Mysterio, Mysterio's my favorite comic book villain of all time, and they really did every single thing that I possibly could have wanted with the character, no matter what, whether it's the creative and innovative action sequences and set pieces that they carry out with Mysterio, or the gritty action set pieces they have with Spider-Man fighting him with his Peter Tingle or his spider senses, whatever you want to call it. I truly really liked that, and I thought it was very unique. Plus, just Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, he gives such a wonderful performance. Now, I'm gonna say this flat out. I think if another actor would have portrayed Mysterio, it probably wouldn't have been the same. I think Jake Gyllenhaal definitively got this character down to who Mysterio was, and I'm really happy that we have a Quentin Beck in the MCU. And coming in at my number 2, yeah, you guys are probably going to hate me for this. Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2. I think Doc Ock is an excellent villain, and the fact is again, he carries one of the best action set pieces through the train sequence within Spider-Man 2. But the thing is with Doc Ock is, even though that film carries him so damn well and brings him about so greatly, my number 1 villain I'm going to get to in a second has something a little bit more for me. But Doc Ock himself, it's just a very menacing villain and a very harsh villain for Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker to kind of get into, because this guy he looked up to and all of a sudden just breaks his heart and totally rips it out. The relationship between that is just so strong, and the performance between the actor and actors in this film are strong. Coming in at my number 1 is Vulture. Michael Keaton's Vulture is the best Spider-Man villain, which is crazy because Vulture is actually one of my least favorite villains in the comic books of Spider-Man. I'm not the biggest fan of Vulture. I think he's kind of a cheesy big bird character that I've just never really liked the design or the character arcs of him, but the way that they had Vulture in here, and in fact I actually really like the design that they featured for Vulture, but the developments between him, how he's just trying to get back at the man, how he's just trying to provide for his family, I really got that story. I kind of really understood Michael Keaton, and the twist of him being Liz's father is great. That theater moment, every single time I saw that film in theaters, seeing the crowd reaction and not understanding that's the father, but also then when it kind of just goes in and Peter's reaction to it is brilliant, and also the set piece action sequences, while not the strongest, of what they do with Vulture inside the MCU and in fact in this storyline is what really hooked me. The action set pieces are pretty cool and they're decent at least, and Vulture has a really cool unique thing, but when I'm looking at it from a story perspective, Vulture happens to be my favorite iteration of him, and the fact that they came around to making me thinking, oh really, I don't want Vulture to be the first Spider-Man villain in the MCU, but coming full circle to making me love this character and really appreciate him more, makes me fall in love with him. But guys, that's my ranking of all 12 Spider-Man villains in the movies. Let me know down below what your guys' ranking is. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Of course, guys, if you guys are new here, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out Sandwich on Films, and I'll make sure to see you guys soon. Stay classy.